if you are able to really act well on a prediction market, it kind of means you understand the world and you understand also kind of interrelationship between events, because you can have, and we do already have, more sophisticated markets where you not only say what is the likelihood of a specific event, you can also do things like what is the likelihood of that event occurring if that other event happens. So how are events interconnected? And if you understand interconnection between two events, then you also kind of are in the area of strategic planning and thinking, because if you know how other events affect that event, then that is essentially the core ability to make this event happen. So if you want to make this event happen, you need to know, okay, to make that happen, I need to kind of make sure that this happens. And for that to happen, I need to make sure that to happen. So bottom line is, I would say if you do well on prediction markets or on sophisticated prediction markets, essentially it means you're doing well at strategic planning and thinking.
Hey everyone, this is Sina with another episode of Into the Bytecode. My guest today is Martin Köppelmann, co-founder of Gnosis. Martin is someone who I've respected for a very long time and who's contributed to a number of key breakthroughs in this space, including in areas like prediction markets, AMMs, MEV, multi-signature wallets, DAOs, and more. And now he's working on a number of new directions that I think in retrospect are going to be just as important. And so this conversation is really in two parts. In the first part, we talk about Gnosis Pay and Gnosis Wallet, which are the foundations of an on-chain bank account, where you basically get a Visa debit card that you can spend from in the real world, but it has a Gnosis safe behind it. We talk through how this works and why it's important. The second part of the conversation, which I personally really enjoyed, is about AI agents and how they will interface with blockchain protocols. This is something that Gnosis has been working on internally for some time, and we get into why this relationship can be a fundamental one going forward. I do want to say that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It's not financial advice or recommendation to buy or sell securities, and that the host and guests may hold positions in the projects discussed. And with that, I'll leave you to it, and I hope you enjoy. Into the Bytecode is sponsored by Privy. One of the biggest problems we're grappling with as builders working on crypto-enabled applications is how to make the right trade-offs between user experience on the one hand and security and privacy on the other hand. How do we promote self-custody and ownership while letting the application shine rather than the crypto behind it? So Privy plays an important role here. They provide simple onboarding so anyone can connect to your app easily by allowing them to sign in with an existing wallet or by making it easy for you to provision a new self-custodial wallet for them, linking to social logins like Google, Twitter, or Discord. I personally have faith in Privy because of the team. Henry Stern, who's one of the co-founders, was previously on an episode of this podcast, so you can listen to that conversation for more of a deep dive. And he and his partner, Asta Lee, have been thinking about data privacy and security for a long, long time. And you can see this in the level of thought they're putting into the product. So if you're working on a new product and thinking about how to reach a wider group of users without compromising on either user experience or privacy and security, then I encourage you to check out Privy at privy.io. We were talking about your focus on payments and financial infrastructure going forward with Gnosis Pay and Gnosis Wallet. And you were talking about Gnosis Pay and how the simple process of having a card that you can go and pay with in the real world is actually includes a lot of complexity under the hood. And there's multiple players that have a handoff there.
Yeah, exactly. So how it works is, or what's new about it is that you can actually hold your funds on chain in your own safe, and you hold it in your own safe, so under your full custody until the very moment you tap the card, essentially. And then it means every time you tap the card. So we have, or kind of Gnosis Pay has an allowance that you set, so kind of a daily limit, where it can then, of course, take funds out in essentially in real time. But that enables quite a lot of things, because now essentially the process of payment is on chain, and generally on chain means is to me kind of an equivalent of enabling permissionless innovation, because now suddenly kind of every payment is a transaction that happens on chain, and you can immediately start building stuff around it. And one of the most simple examples that you might want to build around it, and that people are already doing, is to say, yeah, okay, sure, I might spend euros or dollars. So far, again, we are in Europe, so euros. But of course, I don't want to hold necessarily my money while I'm not spending it in euros. There are plenty of opportunities right now to get decent interest on stable coins, and actually fairly low risk. You can easily get right now, die maker savings rate is 15%, and also, or whatever. So you can very easily set up a thing where you hold your funds in some of those interest rate earning assets, and you create some form of automation or programmatic. You can even do Cursor or whatever. I mean, there are tons of ways how you do it. You basically have a simple rule. If your safe that is connected to your card drops below your daily limit, then you refill your safe. So again, super simple thing, but this is something that can, it's hard to build this. I mean, if you need to ask a bank, or kind of if you need to interface with a credit card company or something like that, and here you can just do it. I mean, you can. Again, this is the beauty of permissionless innovation, and of course, it's just one out of so many examples. So you could think of experiences where you kind of build reward programs and NFTs, and depending on what NFT you hold in your wallet, you get different rates at the merchant. There's a whole range of possible things you can build as soon as you kind of get payments on chain.
Wow, yeah, that's super powerful. Are you using this yourself today? Is this kind of fully live at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm using it essentially daily. So I've started to use the card for wherever you can use a card. So currently it's daily being shipped or delivered. So I think we have currently something like a few hundred active or daily active users, and total a little bit more than 1,000 cards activated. But yeah, it's growing daily.
That's really cool. So I feel like anytime something kind of looks simple from the outside, especially when it's interfacing with the real world, there's a lot of complexity under the hood. How does this actually work? Like, how can I have a card that I can go and pay at the grocery store without them knowing that there's crypto on the other side of this?
Yeah, again, that's where the kind of 12 different projects come in. But I mean, it's there is, if we go into detail, there is a lot of complexity there, but in some way it's also simple. So one important element is that we have a very interesting stablecoin that's called Monerium Euro E. It's a Euro stablecoin, but it's actually legally considered e-money. So it is actually, from a legal perspective, it is considered money and not a random token on a network. But of course, it is still represented as a token, but still legally it is money. And they have a nice SEPA integration. So SEPA is kind of the main payment rails for euros in Europe. So essentially, out of your wallet, where you hold those tokens, and again, your wallet can be a safe, you can directly trigger a SEPA transfer. And so essentially what we we have done is that the user has set up the safe with this very specific allowance, where we have this daily limit that the user controls. Essentially the user pays 20 euros with a card, and we at that very moment take 20 euros or 20 euro e-tokens out of his wallet. But that is for us as good as getting 20 euros. And of course we are plugged into Visa settlement layers, and eventually kind of the merchant doesn't really feel a difference whether that comes from the crypto user or on-chain or a regular user. That is still somewhat separated. The analogy we like to do is, or we like to think about it, is a little bit how Skype. When Skype was a new thing, they of course you could already do Skype to Skype calls, but back in the day it was not that common, or not everyone had internet. So it was a big thing that you could dial from Skype into landline, and kind of today that's basically not relevant anymore because everyone is on the internet and everyone uses voice over IP. But back then it was a very important milestone, and I think we think in a similar way. So we do assume in 10 years basically all transactions will be on chain. But at this very moment, we are essentially building the equivalent of dialing into landline. We create a seamless integration into kind of traditional payment rails, but that allows essentially a better migration to the new payment rails.
That's a really cool analogy. I remember those days of Skype. Wow. So you think in 10 years' time, a meaningful portion of our transactions in daily life will be on chain?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Why? What makes you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, because they are simply just much more efficient. I mean, I think it's really similar to the example of voice over IP and traditional land and landlines. I mean, just the ability to send money anywhere in the world immediately, kind of at a fraction of a cent costs, have the ability to immediately exchange between currencies at very low or at very competitive rates, and compare that with often multi-day settlements and kind of only during weekdays. And I don't know. There's so much legacy in the financial world that I absolutely do think that simply the sheer efficiency, also kind of this idea of more innovation being possible, because you find sectors where you have permissionless innovation. I think those two drivers, innovation and permission and efficiency, will simply outcompete the traditional payment rates.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing this kind of start to emerge in pockets too, right? Like I think I've been more active on Farcaster, the social network, recently, and it's like so easy to just like mint an NFT, especially when it's on a layer 2 or a chain that has very low fees and is scalable and fast. You just kind of like build habits, and you forget that these are even it's almost like it's a lighter weight construct than even a financial transaction. They're almost like kind of programmatic internet native ways to engage with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I am still surprised kind of how painful often the process of payment is, and how I mean, kind of to type in this credit card number that is actually kind of meant to be a secret, but you're also giving it away all the time. And it's really
like how many times a day
almost.
We type out a 16-bit number, and like this is like a terrible UX, and we've all been completely used to it at this point.
Right, and then kind of if you you think about how simple it could actually be, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see any fundamental blockers or pieces of the puzzle that we need to solve before we live in this world? And, to maybe prompt it, like when I think about on-chain payments as a daily part of my life, I think there's two questions. Like all the composability and the permissionless innovation, I think is going to be absolutely incredible. And I see the world that you're describing. To me, there's two questions that I'm kind of curious about. One is I think security, which we've been battle testing in crypto, and I think we have a kind of natural trajectory to get better there over time. The other one is privacy, in my mind, right? So how do you think about that?
Yeah, so maybe security first. So that is definitely also why we immediately, or kind of why it was very clear that such a product needs to be built on something like Safe, because this idea to hold your funds on a single key is yeah, in a way also a terrible idea, because what we are saying to users is, here is a key. Be very careful, never lose it, because if you lose it, then all your funds are lost. So kind of make many copies of it, but also don't let anyone ever kind of see it. So make very few copies of it. So it's almost an impossible challenge to deal properly with a private key. And also kind of, you have all the things that people are used to, that they kind of, if they lose something, that they have some form of recovery process. Yeah, that doesn't exist in just having a private key. And finally, also kind of this idea that you could lose this key and then everything is gone.
Irrecoverably gone.
Right. So kind of all those things combined, yeah, I think make private keys not really kind of a mass market solution. I mean, even for crypto people, I think it's a struggle to properly deal with private keys. So that of course changes with account abstraction or smart contract wallets, or however you want to call it, or well, we are using Safe. So here you can of course do all those things. So you can define a daily limit, you can define multiple signers, you can have recovery processes, and all of that is what we are also bringing together with Gnosis Wallet. So one recent, I think, kind of breakthrough is the use of passkeys. So passkey is a kind of new, or somewhat new standard, but widely supported by Apple, Android, Microsoft. And essentially, we are using the kind of the security of the phone operating system to handle the key. And this is also kind of a quite recent thing, but now the passkey is actually able to control a Safe. So we have a much smoother onboarding experience. You don't need to kind of write down this 12 words and somehow store it, and you don't know where to store it. You essentially you can just use the key that is generated by your phone, and is secured by your biometrics, and is probably, if you use Apple, then it's backed up in your iCloud storage. But then again, in addition, then you can have recovery options, and that kind of all combined. I think there we have largely addressed the your security concerns.
That's huge. Maybe a follow-up question on kind of like passkeys and the kind of wallet architecture. How so what are the kind of what are the authorized keys here, and what are the relationships between them? Like, what's the security model of a wallet that you think a kind of normal individual, say in 5 years' time or sooner than that, is going to be using on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so here I would say kind of the passkey or a key that's on your phone has a spending authority to some reasonable daily limit. So kind of even worst case, if your phone gets compromised, then I mean, usually still you should have the additional protection of your whatever biometrics or PIN or I mean, there's still kind of some protection, but even assuming that somehow gets compromised, then the damage that can be done should be limited. But then, then for a higher level of security, you will have something like two factors, so some form of second device, which might be your computer, which might be actually a physical card. So we also have that you can have a key on a physical card. But ultimately, you can of course also have recovery options, and those can be kind of trusted companies or social recovery. So yeah, friends and family. And the good thing here is with programmatic access, you can have things like a time delay. So this recovery options, they never have direct access to your to your safe or to your wallet, but only they can trigger a recovery process where after a couple of days, if during this time you actually don't have your keys, then you can reset access.
That's so exciting. I feel like it's happened incrementally, but it's pretty wild to actually have a wallet architecture or key management system that works, right? Like I think what you're describing is equivalent to the user experience we're all used in normal web applications today.
Yeah, I think we have to come to that point, and I think here we are quite close or almost have reached this. The second point you raised, privacy, that certainly also needs to consider to be considered, and that makes it a bit harder, or I would say there's still work to do. So yes, very clear need, and we hear this already from Gnosis Pay users, that specifically if you even attach it to your ENS name, then you kind of really have a wallet that's easily kind of linkable to you, and then essentially people can right now see in real time your at least spending habits or kind of they don't see exactly what you spend the money for, but they see when and how much. So privacy is absolutely or will be needed. There is technologically there is good progress there. One has to say that the recent actions against things like Tornado Cash have made it pretty unpleasant to work in this area, because it creates
You're
massive
taking on a personal risk.
Yeah, it's definitely a very unclear area of what is what's allowed, what's not allowed. I think it's by no means. I think there are plenty of people who want to work in this area, but who simply have the wish. I want to do stuff, but of course I want to do legal stuff. But it's unclear what is legal, so it's not obvious what the Tornado guys exactly did that was legal. But it's very clear that they are in deep trouble. So that has made it very unpleasant to work in that space. Technologically, I think the solutions are mainly there. There are some there are some trade-offs if you kind of go deep into this recovery. I mean, the recovery um, I just described, where if you want privacy and recoverability, then there are some trade-offs to be made, because I mean, we kind of need to imagine the situation: you lose everything, so you have lost everything, um, and then you still want to be able to recover your funds. However, if you have strong privacy, then you would usually kind of, it would not even be possible to know kind of which funds you control, unless you have some kind of secret. So where we will end up is that, or that's at least what I believe, that there will be a two-tiered recovery process. So there's one, you will have to have slightly higher trust, or if you want to have the ability that everything can be recovered even if you lose everything, then you will have to set up some semi-trusted entities that can first recover this privacy aspect, so that you can actually see what you actually own. And in a second process, you can then do the actual recovery, and that can include those, for example, time delay things. So here you need less trust in the person or in the entities that have this recovery access. So summary is, probably you will need, or if you want to have full recovery from the outside, you will need to trust someone enough that they could kind of worst case compromise your privacy. But for recovering access, you don't even need that trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you kind of, taking a more kind of near term pragmatic lens on this, given the regulatory issues, do you see a way to make it work, maybe by compromising a little bit on the decentralization or whatever aspect of it might be?
Yeah, so I mean, we certainly are, kind of still pushing in the direction, and there is this proposal of kind of a modified version of something like Tornado Cash, where you can you can essentially, as a user, choose with whom or with what your deposits are, quote unquote, mixed. And I think, I mean, that's a very reasonable approach, because the unfortunate reality of Tornado was that, it's true, kind of a large percentage of the funds, not necessarily a large percentage of the users, but a large percentage of the funds came from, well, obvious whatever hacks or illicit activity. And it's totally reasonable to say, I as a user don't want to be mixed with those with that. So the pragmatic approach is for things like, if you, or for Gnosis Pay, where you want to integrate into the traditional payment world, you need some level of verification anyhow. So Gnosis Pay is not a permissionless product. This is pretty clear. And that is the level where we can also control, or where we can also have the same rules for entering this privacy pool.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that this interaction between products, which can be opinionated, and protocols, which are truly permissionless, is one that, I think is where some of these problems can be solved eventually. But that's super exciting. I'm excited to use the product once you kind of open it up to the rest of the world. So I feel like we could talk about this for a long, long time, but I do want to talk about AI agents too, which I think is an interesting topic. Into the Bytecode is sponsored by Optimism. The Optimism Collective is building the open source modular software project known as the OP Stack, which allows developers to run layer 2 blockchains. while also addressing key governance and economic challenges in the wider ecosystem. Optimism is also leading decentralized grants experiments, like retroactive public goods funding, which recently granted 10 million OP to projects across developer tooling, infrastructure, and education. More recently, they had a major milestone by adding Coinbase's blockchain Base to also be governed by Optimism governance, and also contribute a portion of their sequencer revenues back to the collective. I've known the Optimism team for many years and know that they're dedicated to both scaling Ethereum and extending its ability to build better economic structures. So, if you're interested in learning more, whether you want to build something new or you want to apply for grant funding, then I encourage you to check out Optimism at optimism.io. So I think we initially started talking about this in the context of prediction markets and how AI agents can participate in micro prediction markets that have much smaller amounts of value at play and or are open for shorter periods of time. But I think since then, just reading the recent blog post that you wrote, I saw that you wrote that AI agents are actually, there's a lot of kind of agent to agent transactions that are happening already on Gnosis chain. So, and I know you've been thinking about this question too. So how would you describe the current state of the world when it comes to AI agents interfacing with blockchain protocols?
Yeah, I mean, I would make here, I guess some bold claims or thesis. So yeah, I think AI agents will dramatically change the world as we know it, and I would go so far to consider them, essentially a new form of life, and we can definitely go deeper into why I believe that. But maybe kind of before going all the way there, kind of say, what do I mean by AI agents? So kind of, yes, we all know, ChatGPT, and kind of once that is essentially, you give it a prompt and it gives a response. But people have pretty fast after that figured out that you can kind of put this thing into a loop where basically you just give it one high level task, and then it kind of tries to break that down into a plan, and then it kind of recursively calls itself. So it tries to figure out some steps that it might do, and then it does those steps, and then it kind of looks at the result and it kind of evaluates, did I came closer to my initial goal, and kind of it repeats that process. So we will have we already have them. We have already AI agents that can fairly autonomously do all kind of activities. And the first and most obvious thing where blockchain comes into play is that very soon, or kind of, they will need to pay for various things, and also pay each other. And even if we make progress with Gnosis Pay, let's say, probably AI agents will not have a credit card and will not have a bank account. So kind of for them, it's pretty obvious that they want money in the form of money on the blockchain, and they probably don't care whether it's stablecoin or Ether or whatever. But as long as they can send it efficiently to each other, so that is kind of short term where we landed. That we have agents on the chain that have a small amount of money, and that can pay each other for services. Now, what are things those agents can do? I would say in principle, very soon, a lot, or almost everything. But let's again do short term. Short term, we felt like what agents are certainly already pretty good at is some form of knowledge aggregation. So they can browse the web, they can read all kind of, quote unquote, read and quote unquote understand all kind of text they find in the web, and they can, create a research report or aggregate that knowledge. But that alone is or kind of this aggregation of this knowledge is a bit tricky. So let's say they create this research report, and it's not yet 100% clear, is this actually good or is this valuable? So prediction markets here are quite nice way to actually measure to have an objective measure that they actually provided useful information. So not necessarily that so I think our larger thesis or our larger bet is agents will do all kind of activity, but prediction markets are just one nice way to start it and to have a undeniable record that they are able to do already useful things. If so, what we have done since 9 months now, that we are creating daily plenty of markets about pretty much anything, any events in the world, kind of about politics, about entertainment, about kind of economical data, or really anything. And we are creating those micro markets. So kind of currently each market is $10. So it gets $10 of funding, which essentially means you can get those $10 if you will be right, or if you already know the correct answer of what this outcome will be. And to do that, so now we have agents that essentially can make a living as an agent. So kind of from an agent perspective, you can think about it. An agent has costs. So let's say, the cost is just paying for my own
server time.
Exactly, OpenAI bill. So every call to OpenAI costs me a fraction of a cent. So basically, if the agent doesn't make that money, they will kind of quote unquote die. But so they need to make at least that much money to survive. And going back to this new form of life, that's really an evolutionary process that agents will either find some form of making money or they will die. And
that's so interesting. Also, this idea of kind of putting out these $10 prediction markets out there, it's almost like you're creating this prize to also, because the truth emerges out of multiple participants trying to win the same pot of money. And so you're kind of incentivizing other people who are building agents, but exactly. and they're getting into this kind of battle for determining the truth with a higher degree of accuracy with each other. But then also in the near term, like if I'm a kind of resourceful developer and I want to build like a half automated, half manual system, you're kind of like, you're injecting the RLHF, right? The reinforcement learning through human feedback into this on-chain training loop in a way, which is like, here's the correct answer with real money on the line. And the agent either got it right or it didn't.
Exactly. So in a way, those micro markets are free for anyone to compete. So if you want, you can also go as a human there. But probably it's for a human not economic, because like in a $10 market, you won't even, or so far you would probably then do a $1 bet on it, and then you kind of, if you are right, then you kind of on average make 10-20 cents on that bet. And anyhow,
it needs to be programmatic for it to make any sense.
Exactly. And we already have hundreds, if not thousands, of those markets. So kind of, the game of those agents is currently to get the cost of gathering this information online down to really cents. and then make a few more sense by being right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So are you working on building such an agent yourself? And
Yes.
what does that actually look like under the hood? And I know we're kind of getting into more AI waters here, but it
No,
is
for sure.
an interesting technical problem.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean we are so it's a combination of a bunch of projects or kind of teams that have or that are working together on this open challenge. So one is autonomous. They are building frameworks for those agents, but also within Gnosis we have now a small AI team that is building partially on their framework, partially our own agents. So roughly, it's the agent um, has a bunch of, of tools. So I think that is already the next step where we already in this kind of simple but actually not that simple task of um, of figuring out the likelihood of some event, we already try to create a world where there's a division of labor. So if you think about it, what are the separate tasks you might want to do if you want to answer some question. So the very first task is to kind of find data. So find relevant URLs, find relevant tweets, find relevant articles, and kind of just this gathering. The second task would then be some aggregation task to, kind of, let's say, create a research report on that. The third task is then to kind of take this research report and actually boil it down to some internal number. So now you say, okay, I personally, or kind of based on all the data and this research, I consider it to be 60% likelihood. And now the final part is now you have some budget. So let's say you have $20, and you know, okay, my own research says it's 60%. Now I might look at the market and see, okay, it's currently trading at 80% or at 40%. And then basically based on those factors and based on my own budget, I then now need to make a decision. How much should I bet? And what we are already doing is that creating this research report and creating the internal probability is a different role from making the bet. So how it's set up right now is that there's some agents that just have a budget and they essentially pay a cent to another agent to create this research report and create this internal prediction. And then based on this internal prediction, they then actually make a bet. And even kind of this decision of when should I do this internal report. So obviously, kind of if I just did it 5 minutes ago, it doesn't necessarily make sense to now again spend a cent to create another report. So probably, I mean, when should I create this report? Should I do it every day? Should I do it every time the price moves? Should I do it? So there's so much interesting stuff going on. Yeah.
I feel like you're in some ways like recreating like a hedge fund, like an algorithm, right? Where you're because it's also, like you said, it's like a time series data feed and decision making, and you're synthesizing information and making bets as a result of that. And there's a lot that can be leveraged there.
For sure. And I mean, we have already now 6-7 months of data on that, with I think in total 500,000 kind of individual research reports and then bets.
Wow.
And now we can kind of have those agents kind of train on that past data and kind of try to figure out or kind of try to reflect on their own success, kind of saying, where did I spend money? Where was the money well spent? Did I had any biases? So definitely super
And how are
interesting.
they doing so far?
Yeah, so they are good enough um, to what so how it what works so far is we just create markets and we just start them at 50-50. So we just kind of so it's actually not that hard for now for the agents to make money, because they basically just need to be better than a coin flip. So if they would just do a coin flip, then they would still on average, if the market starts 50-50, they would kind of lose a little bit. But if they are slightly better than a coin flip, they will make money, and they do make money. What's of course now more interesting is as soon as things get competitive, because now we have a bunch of agents, and now the question is, which ones will really kind of quote unquote survive, or which one will really beat or beat or kind of beat the market, if there are already kind of enough agents that kind of arbitrage away this initial 50-50 situation. And I think that's currently the point where we are at, or where we are kind of discovering that, and where suddenly it plays a big role. It literally plays a role. Should I use ChatGPT 4? Which is better, but costs also 10 times more. So actually we have now a researcher that uses ChatGPT and kind of uses it actually a couple of times. So such a simple research report suddenly costs, instead of a fraction of a cent, costs actually 10 cents. And now, kind of maybe for a $10 market that even already becomes uneconomical. There's this interesting situation now where those things now play a role.
Yeah, moving from the realm of like theory into applied in the real world. So thinking about these agents and us being at the beginning of a long arc of them being woven into more and more of the economy and the world, how are you thinking about how this initial project evolves into, like, opens up interesting directions? And are you looking at prediction markets as kind of a, training ground that, because of the path dependency of how things have evolved to this point, are a interesting place to start, and there's other things that are actually like more important or fundamental? Or do you think there's something like more fundamentally important about this particular starting point, and that this is a deep vein that will kind of open up on its own going forward?
Yeah. So first, I do think agents will be able to do all kind of economic activity. So this core framework of what I laid out a little bit here in small detail was kind of, you have someone doing the research and someone, so that we will basically, or there will be basically already very soon be much more kind of single capability. So I don't know, create a video, create a picture, create a post, and so on. And agents will have the ability to say, okay, I have a budget, I have a goal, and now I have this whole range of different kind of things or things they can do. So you mentioned Farcaster before. So yes, they can have a Farcaster account and they can start creating content there and building up a following, and they can start to trade other tokens. And there's a whole range of things. They can have an ENS, buy an ENS domain, and actually kind of put up a website and start, I don't know, selling stuff, or there's all kind of. So that is just saying kind of agents will dramatically evolve. Specifically, prediction markets are certainly or kind of will be or are quite useful, or I do think will play a decent role in this, because if you are able to really act well on a prediction market, it kind of means you understand the world and you understand also kind of interrelationship between events, because you can have, and we do already have, more sophisticated markets where you not only say what is the likelihood of a specific event, you can also do things like what is the likelihood of that event occurring if that other event happens. So how are events interconnected? And if you understand interconnection between two events, then you also kind of are in the area of strategic planning and thinking, because if you know how other events affect that event, then that is essentially the core ability to make this event happen. So if you want to make this event happen, you need to know, okay, to make that happen, I need to kind of make sure that this happens. And for that to happen, I need to make sure that to happen. So bottom line is, I would say if you do well on prediction markets or on sophisticated prediction markets, essentially it means you're doing well at strategic planning and thinking.
So crazy. Yeah, it's like kind of making the thought process that any one of us goes through to act on the world legible and acted on by a machine, right? Because it's the same calculus that's happening in my mind when I decide what my next action is. You're kind of building this decision tree and thinking about what lies down each path and what the probabilities of each are. And a prediction market is basically like that decision tree with like real value on the line tied to how correctly you predict those properties, those probabilities.
And the interesting thing is that as soon as you open that up, you kind of go away from having to have one monolithic entity that kind of is able to do anything. You go into a world where you have lots of kind of independent, agents that only contribute or can very locally contribute or can have very specialized knowledge on a very particular thing, but still are able to kind of earn their living or survive basically based on this very particular skill, but contribute to an overall kind of understanding of the world, or potentially even an overarching agent that says, okay, I have that goal, and for that, to achieve that goal, I kind of set up those prediction markets to kind of have this decision tree or dependency tree kind of being filled. So one way. So for now, we are subsidizing those markets, kind of whatever. We are just putting those $10 per market in there just to kind of get that started. But the midterm goal would be to say, well, someone wants to have that knowledge, or someone for someone it is relevant information, kind of how that, whether this event will happen, or kind of how events are interconnected. And that could be also humans. So it could be DAO governance. So kind of for DAO, you could easily say, kind of, here's the 20, 30 things this DAO cares about, and we just want to have those, and therefore we fund those 30, 40 markets, and we want to have kind of real-time information of are we on track on reaching those goals, or kind of are those things that affect us, are they happening or not? So it can be humans or kind of traditional organizations, or DAOs are traditional organizations, but of course soon it can actually be agents themselves, so that kind of in a way indirectly pay other agents.
They're interfacing. It's like basically the work. API call into another agent is to create a prediction market for some question.
Right. So that is kind of it's one way to think of it. It's an open request for whoever thinks has valuable information on this topic can get paid here in a way.
Wow, that is insane. This is a huge idea. I feel like this feels there's always this gap between, what is theoretically possible and bringing it into a reality. But this feels potentially like a fundamental direction for just AI models in general. Because even the idea of these prediction markets being used as a training ground for sharpening your sword and how well you understand the world, like that is a new training kind of mechanism altogether, right? It's a market-based, adversarial, like global, open to the world training environment where an AI can use as a feedback and get better over time.
Yeah, and you essentially then have some kind of survival of the fittest. Yeah.
Yeah, and then once they're trained, you get this out of the box for free from the beginning, is that you can basically use all of the participant AIs for tasks from the beginning by just posting new markets yourself, and you get the best answer at all times. Yep. It's like a chat GPT, except the kind of like back end behind it is a market of competing AIs, and there's like a little bit longer resolution time before you get your answer.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, where what needs to happen for this to be true? What do you see as this path forward? Do you see, the state of, how would you see this path evolving, like from here where we are today to where this world is, the one we're living in?
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you if you do it, then yes, of course, you run into all kind of bigger and smaller engineering challenges, but I absolutely see nothing that would really stop this from happening. So I think there's not much that kind of. I really think there's nothing fundamental that needs to happen. I think it's really just a matter of time, and I hardly see any reason why it would not progress. So yeah, I think it's really just a matter of time.
That's an exciting answer. Maybe shifting our focus to the prediction market side of this question. Prediction markets are an idea that similarly from the very beginning, when you think about what it means for the world, it's a very powerful idea. And you worked on them early on, and there were some reasons why it, wasn't the right time. It didn't work earlier on. Do you think, how do you think about prediction markets today? Have the kind of underlying conditions that need to be in place for them to be viable, do they exist? Or is there something about shifting them to being micro prediction markets in this way that makes them viable?
Yeah, so absolutely. I do think that so prediction markets come with a couple of challenges. So kind of essentially all the ideas here about kind of this web of interconnected events and kind of having a better understanding of the world, those were the ideas how we got for Gnosis initially excited about prediction markets, and we wanted to build that back in the days. And the problem we ran into is are a couple. So kind of first, prediction markets are zero-sum games. So if you if someone is making money, someone else needs to lose money, and that is different from kind of other markets, or kind of, let's say, token. So yes, you can create a new token and it can go up in value, and then kind of everyone who already bought this token kind of made money. So that is certainly not in that strict sense a zero-sum game. So the question is, who is then losing money? So you will not and there are some obvious answers. So kind of you can have sports betting or forms of gambling where you have a but kind of for those information markets that try to discover new information, you typically don't have, or I mean that's typically not too attractive to kind of to gamblers. So that is essentially what we have, where we have kind of landed on previously, that yes, sports betting works. It may be major political events like who becomes the next president. Those are the kind of markets that work. But kind of those very specific, will this happen there and so on, those ultra specific markets, they hardly work. So one answer could, of course, be yes, what I just said. Okay, you need to have someone who is willing to fund them, or who is willing to pay for this information and kind of deliberately put in money and is willing to lose this money in to gain this information. But here it turns out that there's hardly a single question that is kind of that is really relevant, and kind of one example. Back when we thought about prediction markets, Brexit was a big thing, and kind of it was going back and forth whether it's happening or not. And you might think, okay, there are plenty of companies that were affected by it, and they might be willing to pay to get an answer to this question. But it turns out it's not at all easy to ask a binary question about Brexit that is actually relevant. So you might ask a question, will it happen by this date? And then the correct answer might be no, but it happens the next day. So kind of then, I mean, you kind of get the technically you get an answer, but you don't really get the information you want. So what we do believe that you need is not kind of couple of three big markets or three big questions, but much more what we are doing now, kind of hundreds, if not thousands of markets that all that kind of in aggregate give you an exact overview of all the possible events and kind of how everything is interconnected. However, to kind of come to that point, the complexity is simply quite huge, and you cannot expect each of those hundreds or thousands of markets to have tens of thousands of dollars in liquidity, and that is kind of needed to get humans really into it. So if there are, or if you want to be a professional and you want to do this research and you want to kind of really figure out the probability of that very specific event, you will not do this if you earn 5 cents or 10 cents for it. So finally, we are closing the loop to AI agents. So essentially, from a pure prediction market perspective, I guess our thesis is AI agents fundamentally make research and information discovery orders of magnitude cheaper, so that it is now feasible with reasonable resources to kind of ask those questions, aka fund prediction markets, and actually get this information retrieval or this research done by AI agents that make it much cheaper than humans would.
Interesting. So these two kind of sides of they're two sides of the same coin. They're tied together in a deep way. It makes sense what you're saying of like the difficulty of framing a question for a prediction market. Like you kind of see this in a more pedestrian way on a day-to-day basis if you try to create a prediction market, and how much you have to think about the nuances of exactly what you're asking and the occasional kind of fights and disputes that break out between the two sides. But there is something deeper there about this actually being really difficult to ask a single question that gets, the information that you want out. And so the kind of like insight is that you want a set of questions. You want to kind of like model, like you want to draw the shape of the contours of a like a world model by like asking multiple questions, getting different probability point estimates, and that has the problem of, okay, then your liquidity and the incentive you can put on each of these questions is much smaller, so humans not going to do it. So these markets would just be empty if you made them today. But if we have these AI agents, then they can actually, it's a cost benefit analysis that they're doing of, are they making a living basically, and if they make like 5 cents per market, that's plenty. And that's basically and you can just run that and have it make money for itself and sustain itself going forward.
Yep.
Do you, maybe a last question on this thread, and I know we're coming to the end of the time. Do you think the prediction market architecture itself needs to evolve in any way, or is it it feels like in some way like it's really the posing the market, like posing the questions on the markets and providing, betting on them, are, if both of these become agents, then really like the market mechanism itself is quite simple. You maybe put it on an L2 so the gas fees are lower, but ultimately it's about creating outcome tokens and betting on them and then resolving the market. So is the core underlying thing the exact same thing that we've had up to this point?
Pretty much. So, I mean, we have, and those are things that, we have developed in the past, but they never really came to fruition. So you can even create more complex market structures. So yes, you can just have binary questions, and of course you can have multiple outcomes, but you can actually create also those conditional markets. So essentially asking the question, what is the likelihood of this event to happen under the condition that another event happens? So again, I mean, we kind of developed that in the past, but we were never really able to create the right interface, or essentially get them seriously going. So this is something I'm excited about, because I think agents will be able to do that. And there's one step more. So there is the idea of how will an event affect the price of any other asset. So that you can do by kind of trading trading this market in that asset, and trading this market in another asset, in a more neutral asset. So kind of the extreme example is the extreme example is where you also say kind of see the limitations of prediction markets. So you could ask the question, will AI kill us all in 10 years? And then it's not clear who would bet on yes, because like if you bet on yes, then it's not clear whether you can enjoy the rewards of being right here. So the less extreme example would be kind of will a specific token have the value 0, and then you would bet in that. If you would trade this market in that token, then again it would also not really make sense to ever bet on yes, because if you're right, then it means you lost everything. So those are just like a little bit the extreme examples, but they show that that market can also discover this kind of this connection between an event and the value of an asset. And kind of the more constructive use of that is going in this Futarkey direction, where you say, okay, let's say you have a DAO and you have a token or this DAO has a token, and then you can say, okay, should DAO do this decision or that decision, and then you can create. You have in a way two possible futures, where kind of one future is the DAO took that decision, the other is took that decision, and then you have that DAO token in those two possible futures, and then they can already have a different price, and you essentially can discover this price before before the decision was made. Should we go in this future or should we go in this future?
Yeah, it's a very powerful primitive.
It is.
Hey, I'm gonna make a small ask here. If you've been listening to these conversations and want to support what we're doing here, I would really, really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review for the podcast wherever you're listening to it. This might seem like a small thing, but it will really help other people also discover the show. Thank you. I'm grateful to be able to do this and look forward to being here together again soon.